Jeremy Parker. As Steve mentioned, I lead our programmatic audience strategy at Dell Technologies actually, which that includes our data management platform and our first and third-party data strategy. I'm also a card-carrying member of the AARP, because you do not have to be 50 to take advantage of those discounts. All right, so before I get started, I just want to thank you to the Media Post team for giving me this opportunity to talk to you all today. And thanks you all, or y'all as we say in Texas, for showing up and listening. I'm looking forward to our presentation today. But first, let's talk about Dell Technologies, because as Steve mentioned, everybody probably knows about Dell in some way or another. It might be the dudes are getting a Dell campaign from the early 2000s, or it may be our data center and infrastructure business. What is relatively new is Dell Technologies. We're actually a family of 8 distinct brands. Everything from our PC business, Dell on the left that covers our consumers and our commercial clients, our data center and infrastructure, that is the Dell EMC brand. That's everything that powers the data centers, all the servers and storage. We also have 6 other offerings from a software perspective and security perspective. I'm not going to talk through all of these, but I do have the pleasure of overseeing audience strategy for the Dell and Dell EMC side of the house for both our B2B and B2C business units globally. So before I start with the content agenda, I need to do a quick poll to get a sense of the room. So by showing your hands, how many of you guys are currently leveraging first-party CRM data in your programmatic campaigns? So good mix of you. How many of you feel like you're using it to its fullest potential? Like, are you the CRM masters? Like, you have this thing figured out? I was going to hand over the presentation, so we have no buyers, so I'll continue. Today we'll talk about the first-party data opportunity, what we saw at Dell, why it matters to us, our approach to bringing first-party data on board, the business results, and then finally what's next, because this is a journey that will be on for quite a while, and I don't see it ending anytime soon. So as I mentioned, you guys pretty much agreed with this poll. 85% of marketers say first-party data is critical for business success. But 4 in 10 marketers say they're leveraging less than 40% of their overall first-party data potential. We also fit in this boat, especially just a few years ago. So first, let's take a look back at 2017. Which in ad tech space, that's like a decade. GDPR was just coming and programmatic TV was all the rage. I guess some of those are still the case. But in 2017, our standard campaign consisted of 61% third-party data and 7 third-party data providers. Our contact strategy team, the team that owns our CRM records, we're really focused on email and catalog as the primary methods of reaching our current customers. The problem with that, of course, is catalogs are expensive. You probably all received several catalogs from us. We had, I think, 100 million people in the US on our CRM files. And email opt-outs are pretty high, and opt-ins aren't getting any better anytime soon. So we needed a new way to reach our consumers. So flash forward to 2019, the same campaign, same B2C campaign, we're leveraging 16% third-party data, and now 3 third-party data providers. And that's been critical for us. So we'll talk through how we got there. But first, it's like, why did we start? If you think about the market in general, what's happening, there's a few things that come up. Privacy and legislation. GDPR, as I mentioned earlier. What's happening with ITP, Safari, blocking third-party cookies. The rumors of what Chrome will do with similar ITP-like security measures. So we had to think outside of the box and follow some of the leads of many of the intelligent people in this room and really start honing in on our first-party CRM data. Another reason is the customer experience. It's our data. We know our customers better than anyone else, so we should take full advantage of that. There's also a significant cost savings. I'm not paying data CPMs for every audience, every impression that I'm sending. because I own that data. And lastly, it's our competitive advantage. No one else has our data, so we can use it to our advantage. One thing that's not on the slide, but I think is very important, is from a transparency and accuracy standpoint. If we're using our first-party data, we have no one to blame but ourselves. Like, have any of you guys done the Facebook segment or the big data provider to see what segments you qualify for? I did that yesterday. So I have 4 children. My household income is under $15,000, and my household income is over $500,000. I'll take the latter, but unfortunately, none of that is true. But I don't want to come off as a hater of third-party data, because we definitely rely on third-party data. We rely on third-party data for insights. Something that was really interesting is recently we were taking a look at our gaming and Alienware customers, and we found that nearly 1/3 of those are also IT decision makers, which IT decision makers are our core audience for our B2B campaigns. So it presents a great opportunity from some cross-pollination from either a targeting or creative perspective. So we do leverage third-party data for modeling and help scaling our first-party audiences. As one of the oldest direct-to-consumer brands, we have collected a lot of data over the past 30-plus years. But no matter, even though we have 60 million records, we still depend on third-party data to help scale that. What the big change has been is there on the bottom. It's less providers and more strategic partners. So this has been critical for us. As I showed earlier, the 7 data providers for one campaign, it was essentially checking the box for everyone that could provide intent-based data for people in the market for PCs. Because our team is pretty small. We have 4 people that are responsible for creating the audiences, pushing them to all the different destinations, and doing weekly optimizations. They're creating 300+ new audiences every quarter, and they don't honestly have the time or bandwidth to work with that many data providers. So instead, we focused on three core providers that we've developed relationships with. We brief them in just like we would brief our agency in. And they really understand our business, and they're able to help build audiences for us and send them directly to our DMP for execution. So this has been really critical for our success, is partnering with some strategic third-party data providers, and I know many of you are in this room that have some pretty interesting data. So the steps that we took to fully leverage our first-party CRM data. First, we had to assess our technology stack and our business requirements. Dell and Dell Technologies has a pretty sophisticated stack. We've been doing ad tech, partially in-house, for 6+ years. We have an established DMP that we use as the data repository for all of our audience data. We also have a great onboarding relationship that helps take that CRM-based data and get it into the DMP. The DSPs, the activation channels, we have great relationships with a few DSPs for all of our media types. And then finally, the DCO engine. Dynamic Creative has been really helpful in helping us test and learn new creative approaches quickly. And in the middle, we have tracking and measurement, because it's critical for us to be able to measure. We will not do anything unless we can measure it. So we do have a multi-touch attribution solution that really helps us evaluate more real-time how our audiences are performing. But the piece that was missing was the organizational buy-in. So what we said earlier, our contact strategy team, very talented team, but their charter was focused on direct mail and email. But over the past couple years, we've had a ton of buy-in from that team, and now they're approaching a digital-first strategy, which has been great for all of us. So once we assessed our technology stack, once we had the organizational buy-in, it was time to start. So what we did is took a look at everything that we had available. We had to identify and organize our data. And with 30 years of consumer data, that's a lot to go through. We identified the key areas or the key data points that we need, like name, email address, phone number. Those things are needed to onboard your records. And from an attributes perspective, we just looked at what really matters and how we plan to use it. Like, we've tried this in the past. We've tried onboarding CRM records for many, many years. But since it wasn't priority, the CRM team would do a data dump into our onboarding platform, and we'd get a lot of records with hundreds of different attributes that we didn't understand as the ad tech team how to use. So we worked really closely with them to identify what matters. Let's understand our customers and their purchase history, their purchase patterns. How often are they purchasing laptops? Are they purchasing low-end systems, high-end XPS systems? Are they gamers? And also, what's their preferred purchase method? Do they purchase online through our e-commerce site? Do they call Dell.com to make a purchase with a sales rep? Or do they prefer to purchase for a big box retailer? This all impacts how we go to market with that particular segment. So now, once we had the data in, the data organized, it was time to begin the execution. So with this, we took an approach of starting broad. We did not want to over-engineer our segmentation from the beginning. And I know this is kind of difficult for some of us data guys, as we can slice and dice the data in so many ways, and we've all been guilty of that. But we found that even though I can target 18 to 24-year-old Alienware customers that live in Fort Myers, Florida, I don't have the creative to support, and the audience would be so small, it doesn't matter. So we started broad, just looking at our development and retention customers, people that have purchased within the past 2 to 5 years. We onboarded those through our onboarding partner and pushed out to a couple of activation channels, starting with just display and video. We just wanted to test this and learn, and from there, we optimize. So that brings me to the next point. Once we started the test, we continue to refine, we continue to expand, and we continue to refine, expand, optimize. We let the data do the decisioning. So we start with the hypothesis in that previous slide, but we let the data tell us how we should better segment these audiences. And from there, we grow the audiences. Again, we take our top performing audiences and build models from them. That's great for channels that are a little difficult to get scale, sometimes video, TV. We also do a lot of sequential messaging now. So we'll take our customers that may have on the acquisition end and try to lead them through that journey, starting with upper funnel messages all the way down to performance-based displays with offers. And we've seen a big increase in performance by including more sequential-based messages. It's also important, since we do have such a fine amount of records, we don't want to make sure we're overexposing our customers. So we do our best to apply frequency caps, consolidate the partners we're working with, so we're not overreaching our customers and annoying them. And lastly, we also implement non-media-based tactics. So we try to align our audiences to the direct mail calendar, the email calendar, to really nurture them throughout their purchase journey. So with that, I could probably spend another couple hours, and we're doing a breakout session. We definitely can go in more details of how we accomplish this. But let's talk about the results, and this is just from the past 12 months. So we've seen a 4x increase in the number of CRM audiences we're using for programmatic activation. Right now, we're leveraging 55 CRM audiences across nearly every channel possible: display, social, search, video, radio, podcast, TV, out of home, maybe on the road if we can do that without creeping our customers out. And then the business outcomes. We've talked a lot about business outcomes. We've increased the ROAS, and ROAS is our key business metric here, 4.7x when compared to third-party audiences. So that's a huge, significant lift compared to what we were doing with our pure third-party data providers. And consequently, we were able to reduce our third-party data spend by over 50% year over year. Now, this was pretty remarkable. But we're not done. For us, what's next? My priorities come to things that I mentioned earlier. We talked about what's happening in the market. How do we prepare for an eventual cookieless world? We have to be prepared, and that includes our first-party data, as well as an identity solution. For us to really reach the goal of a true omni-channel marketing experience that we're striving for, we have to stop marketing to our customers like devices and cookies and start marketing to them like people. So kind of my final thoughts, if you do have first-party CRM data, put it to work. Don't over-segment it from the beginning. Let the data do the decisioning, and rely on your strategic third-party data providers to help fill the gaps. With that.
Thank you, Jeremy. We have time for questions.
Hi, Brian Wachowski from Bizarre Voice. Would you mind diving a layer deeper on your sources of first party, how you collect it in as much as you can share, emails versus tag media? And I'd love to understand a little bit more about what you're collecting.
Yeah. So first party data, we've collected a ton of online data. That's always been the case, and we've used online-based first party data in all of our campaigns since the inception. What was new is our offline records. So this could be customers that have purchased by calling in, customers that have purchased within the past 1 to 10 years. So offline sales records, email subscribers. So there's a multitude of different data sources and way we've acquired data. Sometimes it's been from data lists we acquired. So it's bringing all of that data in. And again, there's about 70 million records right now that we're onboarding, and those are just offline records.
And when you look at ROAS, is that offline and online spend?
When we're looking at ROAS and focused specifically on the B2C campaigns, we're looking at return on ad spend for online purchases. It's a little more difficult to quantify real time, those offline purchases, but we do some lift studies and some other ways to be able to measure that offline impact.
Since you're an international company, can you tell us something about how you're handling the various privacy requirements worldwide, and what you may be, since you mentioned moving towards a cookieless world, I'm curious about what you're learning from your experiences, especially in Europe, and anticipating what may be happening in the US.
Yeah, so we do operate. We have several campaigns live and throughout EMEA. And initially, once GDPR happened, I mean, our cookie volume significantly decreased. We're not using first-party CRM data there yet. We're actually going to start very soon. So it was definitely challenging. But what we did see over time, we made a shift to more contextual-based tactics, which perform pretty decent. And then over time, again, by identifying those data partners that you trust, that you understand where they get the data from, and that they're gaining the right consent, we've been able to build up those cookie pools over the past 12 months.
So these are disciplines you'll be able to bring over, say, if the California privacy regulations start moving, sort of generalized, and you'll be able to use those similar learnings.
Exactly. It's the similar learnings from GDPR, and again, it goes back to what we've been doing. It's focusing on our first-party data, collecting it offline and online through our first-party tags versus third-party tags, which historically is what we've been using, just in case the regulation happens in California, which it will, and then if Google decides to implement additional security protocols.
Since you mentioned frequency at one point, could you tell us a little bit more about what you're learning about frequency, since you're focusing on your existing customers, what you're learning about how much they'll tolerate, points of diminishing returns? Have there been any surprisings or learnings about how much, when you're relying on first-party data, when you're relying on your existing pool to both gather and also talk to, what you're learning about how much you really can talk to them?
Yeah, and that's an area that we're still focused on improving. Because right now we do receive some data back, but right now I don't know what the magic number is for touches to lead to conversion. We work really closely, and we have great agency partners with Group M that have done some analysis for us. But it's difficult to quantify because every customer has a different journey, and we don't want to reach that point of annoyance. So we do set our frequency caps relatively high, but we are working on some new technology that really kind of helps us with a customer journey aspect and really define what are the key number of touches that lead to conversion without annoying our customers.
Juan from ARP. Great
Juan.
presentation, Jeremy.
Thank you.
I had a question. You had mentioned that dynamic creative was a game changer for you. Who are you using?
This is online. We can talk offline about that probably. I will say about our team, the ad tech team in general, we're vendor agnostic. So we're always evaluating our technology partners and making adjustments as needed. But I'll definitely happy to talk to you about all of our partnerships.
Well, can you talk about where dynamic creative mattered most and least? We're actually going to be talking about this later this morning. We've got we have one Life Extension and I are going to be talking about how they've been using dynamic creative. So I'm curious about where you saw it move the needle and maybe where not.
Yeah. So I'm not the expert on dynamic creative, but of course on the audience side, I'm always interested in what creatives we're showing to our customers. So pretty basic stuff when you're thinking about online engagement, making sure when a customer comes to our website and looks at a specific product, make sure you're showing that ad with a specific product and an offer tied to it. So we've been doing more offer-based ads, discount-based driven ads, especially for like our more cost-conscious customers. We've also used DCO in dynamic native now. We're using it for dynamic video now. It just gives us the ability to quickly test new things without having to go through the entire process of building the creative from start to finish. I mean, the creative process does happen, but it allows us to quickly change and adapt based off of results.
Has this process of drilling deeper into the first-party data and getting closer to your audience given you new insights about where you sit within your competitive set, how your brand differentiates from others, when and where your customers tend to go elsewhere?
Yeah. So there are some obvious things about our customers, especially on the lower end or more cost-conscious. They're looking for the cheapest that's good enough. For our higher-end customers, we do have a pretty strong brand affinity. For our higher end customers, especially the ones that are purchasing like our XPS, which is our premium laptops. And like I mentioned earlier, it's pretty interesting with the dynamic between our gaming customers and IT decision makers also having an affinity for Dell on the B2B side. So there have been several things that have been worthwhile. And there's other things that we look at if our small business customers are over-indexing with an affinity for NASCAR. And it's like, okay, but do I do anything with this? So I think the data, you have to really dig in, understand where it's coming from. And that's why it's important to consolidate data providers so you have that single source of truth. Mm-hmm. If you ever look at an insights from 50 different data providers, they'll tell you something completely different about each of the audiences.
And I've always been curious about this, about the relationship between the Alienware brand within Dell and the rest of the business. So there actually is a lot of overlap and crossover, and you actually get a lot of learnings from the Alienware side and that gamer cohort for even your IT marketing.
Yeah. So it's just pretty interesting. If you think of IT decision makers, they're gamers. That's that wasn't too surprising, but I mean we maybe have thought that before, but now we're seeing it in the data. And we're able to start doing some of those cross-pollinations between targeting IT decision makers with gaming creative and vice versa.
And Jeremy's going to lead the roundtable on first-party data at the end of the morning. Jeremy, thank you very much.